welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our latest batch of listener questions. In this episode, we're talking about the players we thought would be great, but who maybe weren't. We're seeing what's going on in Man United's academy. We're comparing soccer celebrations to Super Bowl ones, and much, much more. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, your friend, my friend, the Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. I'm excited to be here. These are some wonderful questions, as always, which means I'm always excited for listener questions episodes.
Aren't we all, Taylor? Aren't we all? Bit of interactivity with dear listener. We love it, don't we?
We do. We love that aspect. I love just that there are like so many different questions and like of so many different things that you bounce from, like comparing a city to Philadelphia to Manchester United's academy to like I don't know, like what was the last question that we have? Oh, musical careers of footballers.
Yeah,
like it's all over the place. Yeah,
Alexei Lalis's record catalogue.
There you go. Strap in, listener. We'll talk about Alexei Lalis's musical career later on in this episode. Graham Rutham's here. Hello, Graham.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. Thank you. It's wonderful to join you on this here Friday, right? Yeah, having fun today?
Yeah, definitely Friday. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's
right.
the weekend. Yeah.
Yay! The weekend's here. Joe Larry, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. I'm mostly curious. Only folks watching on YouTube, I suppose, can see. Graham, what is this jacket you have? I thought it was Celtic for a while. It's clearly not. I don't recognize the badge. Hit me.
I'm not surprised you don't recognise the badge, Joe, because this is Eriskay FC. They are from the 11th tier of Scottish football. And basically, they play on a pitch. They're an island club. They're from an island community where there's like 100 people that live. And you might have seen them, Joe, because they were recognised by FIFA. Their pitch was recognised as one of the eight most remarkable places in the world to play football.
Okay.
And they shot a documentary film about this for their museum in Zurich, which, of course, you visited recently. So I don't know whether the Eriskay film is still there, but they are mildly famous in Scottish football circles for having the most beautiful pitch in Scottish football. So I decided to buy. They had some merch on sale once, so I bought a tracksuit top.
I did not see that at the museum, and I so wish I had. That rules. That absolutely rules. And also, Taylor looks completely different now. What happened to the Taylor?
It's Friday now. It was Thursday for me before, but now it's Friday.
That's
so
how that works.
Yes, if you're wondering, the clock changed really abruptly, and I had to go honor that.
We record
change.
on the International Dateline. That explains everything.
Of course.
I do. I just learned, Graham, that Scotland has an 11th tier of soccer. That's impressive.
Oh, so did I. Yeah, I didn't know. Some would say that's too many tiers, quite frankly, but not me.
Nope,
Right here.
nope,
This guy would. Weirdly, it's actually a circle, and you get to the 11th tier, and that is Celtic and Rangers. It's very strange. It comes back round. Yeah.
Lads, if we really band together, we can be promoted to the top flight in in a decade. Guys, we can do this. 2040, here we come.
I mean, I smell a Welcome to Wrexham competitor brought to you by Total Soccer Show. Let's make it happen.
Well, I smell a TSS Discord crowdfunder to make this happen. Let's buy Eriskay FC. We can all get tops like this.
Oh, wow. Okay. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, where you can see tops like that and much, much more in our bonus episodes, bonus video content, and access to our Discord server, where all the cool kids are hanging out, and where you can submit listener questions. Graham, I was listening to another podcast in a different genre the other day, and they had a genius way for listeners to submit questions. You can only do it through 5-star reviews. Genius.
That's good, yeah. We'd
Good,
appreciate
right?
a few of those, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should
Send
start
them
doing
our way.
that.
Sorry, other pop.
What is that?
Yeah, I was tripping over that as well, Joe.
I didn't understand. Did anybody else not understand, Ryan?
So,
Might be
in the
the
last
accent.
few
Oh,
years...
Soccer 101. It was Soccer 101 that you were listening to?
Soccer
That makes
101.
sense. There it is.
Yeah,
There
I
it
was
is.
going to say.
Gotcha.
I was gonna say. It was in the TSS-averse. Don't worry, Joe. Totally.
The TSS event.
Treading in some dangerous waters, Ryan. That's
Get
all
that
I'm saying.
crowdfunded as well.
Ooh, yeah, there are non-soccer podcasts available. I hate to break it to you, Joe, but there's only one soccer podcast. There's two, as we've discussed.
Is
Patreon.com/.
Mourinho Thanos in that world? Who's Thanos?
Ooh.
Right?
Yes.
yeah.
I think so. That feels
Feels
right.
Ryan's staying quiet because he's never seen a Marvel film in his life.
I have, Graham. As is established as is canon, I finished with Marvel in the one where Thanos made everything end.
Sure.
Because
Whoa,
they forget.
spoiler alert. Yeah.
Ryan's
That's
only
what I finished
seen
as
the Fantastic Four movie from 1994 that they made to keep the licensing rights and use like knockoff props and knockoff actors. That's the only Marvel film that Ryan has seen.
Diego Simeone as the Hulk. Anybody?
Ooh.
Any takers?
Yes, please.
Feels pretty good.
I can't
Feels
imagine
like.
it's just Diego Simeone in human form being furious, and then him in Hulk form being equally furious.
Correct.
There's no change between the two.
Okay,
I feel
guys.
like Herrera, that Miguel Herrera has to be the Hulk, right?
Oh,
Like, with
that's
his-
good. That's really good.
How long do we have to keep this talk going before Ryan just leaves?
Jesse Marsh gives off some Hawkeye energy.
That's what
if you
we're
ask me.
hoping
The rails
Just-
are here. We're over here. Let's get back on them, okay? Here is a question from Gritty for the Union, who says,
Pulisic is
in
Captain
Philadelphia, I got a front row seat post Super Bowl to watch fireworks downtown, to watch SWAT police, pole climbers, car climbers, scaffold climbers, climbers in general, and some people even uprooted a tree. God bless Philly. Speaking of post-game celebrations, what specific games or events do you think compare to the city atmosphere and spontaneous revelry that was the Philadelphia Super Bowl win? The only one that comes to mind for me, says Gritty for the Union, was the rather recent one with Napoli winning the Scudetto. Any thoughts here? Will we ever see that much love for a soccer game in the US? That's an interesting question in itself, Taylor. But I would say straight off the bat, I wasn't there in Philadelphia to witness the Super Bowl celebrations, but I know they went hard.
They did.
I was there in Naples to witness their Scudetto celebrations, as I believe was Graham Rutherman of this parish. They went pretty hard. I think when Argentina win World Cups, they go pretty hard as well. So there's quite a few comparisons, Taylor, to the world of soccer here.
First of all, I got it wrong. Christian Pulisic isn't Captain America. Weston McKennie is. Secondly, Philly does go hard in all
that's
aspects
good.
of things. And so if we are outlining this question for people who are less familiar with the city of Philadelphia and the sports scene in Philadelphia, I would say Philly, in my experience, is a city that feels disrespected, but then also has a lot of pride. I think it's perceived as a less glamorous city, maybe more working class, more industrial, a lot of that having to do with its vicinity to Washington and to New York City. But they're also, and this is a key thing for the Eagles' win, they're the only game in town, at least from an NFL perspective. It's not LA, it's not New York, where you've got multiple teams. And that is a thing that I factored into my answer, because I think London, for example, is so stratified. You have so many different clubs operating in London that one team winning there isn't going to make the whole city ignite with passion and joy. It kind of has to be a situation in which you are the only game in town, so that when you win, the entire city is going to be really excited about that. The exception to that, in my mind, would be maybe Roma and Lazio. I think either one of them winning it for maybe feeling like they are second or third on the list of places people look to when it comes to Italian football. You think of the North and you think of Napoli. Maybe you don't think of Rome as much. If either one of them won it, I feel like it would be sort of spontaneous, chaotic celebrations around the entire city. In the Premier League, though, the one that I would ask Ryan and Graham about, would Newcastle be like this? I think the Saudi aspect makes it a little bit more complicated, but I feel like Newcastle winning the Premier League, you would see the entire city of Newcastle shut down for at least a day.
Yeah, I think that would happen in Newcastle. Newcastle haven't won anything, and I mean they're going to be in a Carabao Cup final next month. If they win that, I kind of feel like there might be something similar to the Philadelphia scenes. When you were describing Philadelphia, and I've never been to Philly, I'd like to go one day, but when you were describing Philadelphia, Taylor, Liverpool was the city that, as in a footballing comparison, that I sort of thought of, where disrespected by Tory governments, of course, managed to decline, but have great pride in themselves and a real kind of distinctive identity of that city and those people. Liverpool was the first one that I thought of, and actually, it's maybe not quite on the Philly scale of things. I don't think any cars were overturned or trees uprooted, but I do remember when Liverpool won the 2019 Champions League, and they had I think 750,000 fans on the streets, and there were all these kinds of flares and pyros. And there's one picture of the team bus down on the Albert Docks, and it's just an incredible scene. So yeah, Liverpool or Newcastle were the two that I thought of.
Yeah. I think Atletico Madrid would probably go pretty hard, right? They have done previously.
Yeah, so they celebrate in the fountain, right? That's if you win a title in Madrid, you go to, I forget what it's called, but the fountain in front of the palace in Madrid.
Do you then tear down that fountain and that palace? Because if the answer is no, then no, it is not Philadelphia.
Well, I think they had to stop Diego Simeone from doing that.
In Hulk form. Yeah, that makes sense.
Sun's getting real low, big guy.
That's good stuff, Joe. That's good stuff. As to the U.S. aspect of this question, I kind of think we saw flashes of it in 2010 with the Donovan goal. You can find that YouTube compilation of people in bars and crowds reacting to Donovan's goal against Algeria. The Rudy theme song playing behind it really helps elevate things. But that was one where I remember showing that to some British friends. Sorry, Ryan and Graham. I had other ones at the time. And they were sort of like, yeah, I mean, isn't that how like a country celebrates when its national team scores? But the fact that it's in bars all over the country, like in every part of the country, and everybody is into it, I do think you would get some pretty chaotic, spontaneous celebrations if the United States ever won a World Cup.
So, well, that was going to be my question, right? What does that look like? Let's say in 2026 it happens. By some miracle, the US win the World Cup on home soil. Is that an Argentina style? And you referenced Argentina, Ryan. I think Argentina is the closest to a Philly Super Bowl celebration where they had, when they won the World Cup in 2022, there were 4 million people on the streets of Buenos Aires.
The videos are insane.
Yeah, the team had to escape. They were on a team bus going through the streets as is customary. They had to escape on a helicopter because apparently it wasn't safe for them to continue through the streets. So that is
How big was that helicopter?
Well,
Messi's a small
Messi's
dude.
only small.
I mean, yeah, there it
Holding
is.
on the rails.
Same joke. So that is the comparison, right? That's the Philly celebration. But if the US win the World Cup, is it like an Argentina-style street party, or is it a ticketed event at Hard Rock Stadium where Maroon 5 play?
Both.
Like
It's both.
No, honestly, I think it's neither. I guess to toss my rock out here. Like, I just don't see there being any real unified, like, countrywide World Cup celebration in the way that it feels like.
I mean, the women got a ticker tape parade, no?
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between that and sort of the spontaneity that feels much more widespread for Argentina, say, winning the World Cup. I know we're talking about Buenos Aires and all the people pouring out into the streets. Maybe I'm missing something here. It just feels very, very different. I don't think, given how gigantic the United States is and how there is not a dominant city in the United States, maybe LA and New York people are going to be mad at me because they all think it's them. There's not a dominant city that is obviously the soccer capital of the country.
LA
Sorry,
people
St.
don't
Louis
care.
and Seattle and whoever
New York
else.
people are
Like,
mad.
it just, I don't think it's there. Like, my answer to the last question that Gritty asked is no. Well, not no, but it's going to be a long time before we ever see that much love for a soccer game in the United States. The U.S. aren't going to win the World Cup, so we're not going to see this regardless. But even if they were to see it, it is so disparate, and the country is so gigantic that I don't think it's there. And we have examples on the women's side, and nothing that we've seen in the United States compares to Napoli and the Scudetto, which was also on my list, and I think is a great one from Gritty as well in the example, because it is totally a good answer here. And then Argentina post-World Cup and other things that are in that tier. I genuinely think we are a really long way from that sort of thing happening. And also the U.S. is just disadvantaged when it comes to putting on those kinds of things anyway because of how big it is.
When the U.S. wins in 2026, Joe will eat his words, because I think if that were to happen, there would be a ticker tape parade in New York. I think that is definitely where they would focus their celebrations. But
I guess my point is that that's not the bar, nor is that like what Gritty is talking about in the question. Sorry to interrupt, Taylor. But
no,
like,
but I'm
much
saying
more
to Graham's-
spontaneous, sort of like extremely widespread and almost uncontrollable sort of energy. Yeah, I feel like those are different things. I know you're talking to Graham, so go ahead.
I was talking to Graham's Hard Rock Cafe, sponsored by Maroon 5 or whatever. I feel like you would get that, but I do think if the men went further and further, you would have more cities organizing more public viewing like opportunities with bigger screens, and I think you're certainly not getting anything close to Argentina, and it's going to be more contained and controlled because there isn't that level of intensity and feeling towards the national team. But I think as you got more bigger public viewing areas, you're going to get a more bigger reaction if the U.S. were to go further and further and then ultimately win. I think it would kind of, you would have like pockets, certainly. You wouldn't have, okay, everyone come together in Des Moines and we as a nation are going to riot. But I think you would get pockets of emphatic celebration, and then you'd have the one kind of more sanitized one on top, which maybe, to Joe's point, doesn't really reflect the Philly level of like widespread mayhem. I think you probably can't have that in a country of this size, but I think you would get pockets of mayhem.
Ryan, how far into the Ticketmaster queue are you for the Maroon 5 US celebration at Hard Rock Stadium? I saw your face. It lit up.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm totally there. I think to Joe's point about the country being massive, it's very important. I think what differentiates the US from many, certainly European countries, is that certainly at the UK, countries like Italy are a monoculture, where everyone, the big news story of the day affects the entire country. Like single time zone countries tend to be that way. There's not a monoculture in the US. Lots of different things going on. What's happening in New York is nowhere near what's happening in California. So it does affect the mass celebrations of any sport in this kind of thing.
Is there a national sporting event that would get people, any sport, I'm not just talking about soccer here, is there a national sporting event in the US that would get people from east to west out on the streets to celebrate? Like in the Philly sort of way, like basketball, like the Olympics obviously doesn't get celebrated in that way, like because obviously it's a different sporting landscape with teams and states and so on. To your point, Ryan, is there anything nationally that unites people in that way?
Olympics has to be the closest thing, I would imagine. World Cups are like kind of right there too, but I think because those are the closest things, the answer is no. I mean, barring like some sort of response to a national tragedy, which is like really not, I don't think, where you were trying to go with this question.
Yeah, because I think even if you did a World Cup like of basketball and you decided we're going to move away from the Olympics, we're going to have every 4 years a World Cup, like the U.S. is coming in as Brazil in that scenario. You are expected to win, you're expected to be competitive, and so I think it would have to be a sport that really like grips the nation. So, like supposedly that's the Miracle on Ice, the hockey team in the 1980 Olympics. I think it was 80. Like I wasn't alive then, so I don't know. So maybe if you got, but then that has obviously like geopolitical aspects to it, or a massive geopolitical aspect to it. That is what kind of turned the attention and made everybody focus in on it. So, like if you got the intersection of politics and sport and an underdog story as well with a sport that had broad appeal, then maybe, but I'm not sure what that is, and I'm not sure what that would look like these days and anything geopolitically involving the United States. I don't know if we're the underdog these days, so I don't know how that's going to work either. So it's a tough one. I mean, maybe, I guess the entire nation was united behind the Chiefs not winning, so maybe it was that. Maybe it was everybody spontaneously celebrating the Chiefs getting destroyed in the Super Bowl. Maybe that's your answer.
I think it's USL D1, to be honest. That's the thing that's going to unite.
That's the answer. Yeah, the first winner of USL D1 is going to, they're going to be out on the streets dancing to the...
Congratulations, Portland Bangers FC.
Wow. You did it, guys.
If there's one team that can unite the nation, it's the Bangers.
Yeah.
A Space Jam.
Giant anthropomorphic sausage running down the streets of Portland celebrating. Wonderful.
I was going to take us down a Space Jam route, but I feel like an anthropomorphic hot dog is really where this conversation needs to end.
Saucy, the anthropomorphic hot dog. More of that, please. Thank you, Gritty, for the Union, for your question. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to ask what happened to Man United's academy. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions. Bry Guy's been in touch via our Discord server and asks what's happened to Manchester United's academy. Academy players form the core of Sir Alex Ferguson's team for decades, but 25 years into this century, they've produced very few players that are gaining top-level minutes. Of the players born after 2000, Manu and Garnacho are the current academy players in the first team, but only Manu actually came through the United youth ranks. In another question, which Taylor Rockwell, I'm sure, is delighted to field about Manchester United here.
Pass.
I presume the answer, Taylor, is that Jim Ratcliffe fired them all?
I think the answer is complicated. And maybe that is my Manchester United blinders being put on. But I will say, as of 4 months ago, they were joint top with Liverpool for most former academy players to play at least 1 minute this season. They had 8. So there are still academy players playing for Manchester United and coming through the academy, some of whom are coming more good than others. But within that, there is obviously a ton of nuance, starting with the idea that they set the bar at played 1 minute. And to the point of this question, it is fewer players who have, like, consistent 80-minute performances or 90-minute performances coming through the academy. You also just have fewer players coming through the full academy. So a lot of the players that we look to, like more recently, so let's say Mason Greenwood, Scott McTominay, Kambwala, Fernandez, Hannibal, those are all players that have come through the academy. 3 of those players joined when they were 16 years of age or older, because that's how you can bring in young players and get them into the team at a younger age, but not sort of violate rules. And so those players technically are academy players, but they're not really we signed him when he was 12 or 11, and they've been kind of steeped in the tradition of the club, because the club doesn't really have traditions at this point in time. When Sir Alex Ferguson is there, you have consistency, you have stability, you have one person who's delegating but making all the decisions and running everything, and within that, I think you can have stability, you can have development, you can have players coming through and sort of maturing into what is needed to make the first team. When you have 7 different coaches in 6 seasons or whatever it is, and you have different philosophies, and you don't really have an overarching philosophy when it comes to the style of play or the technical development. It's more of a scattershot thing, and when you have teenagers coming in when they're 16 or 17 and joining the academy and booting out players who have been there much longer, it creates just a murkier situation where you don't have as much consistency, and it becomes less of a conveyor belt and more, I don't know, like raindrops falling randomly. Like it's less of a machine, I think, these days. It's still there. It just doesn't function in the same way that it used to.
Oh dear. Graham, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so to further Taylor's point about Manchester United are still bringing through young players. I mean, I guess it depends what metrics you're using, but the Premier League actually has this thing called an academy productivity table. And the team that is top of that productivity table right now is Manchester United. Mm-hmm. So they look at things over a 10-year window. And the rankings that I'm looking at are from late 2023. I actually couldn't find them for last year. Maybe they're not published yet, being early in 2025. But they look at things like first-team debuts and minutes played. So Manchester United in that 10-year period have given 46 first-team debuts to academy players in the Premier League and over 4,000 minutes in the Premier League. I found another ranking system by Training Ground Guru, whose stuff I have followed for a while. They're a good follow on social media. I guess their methodology is a little bit different, but they still have Manchester United third in their rankings from 2024. Only Chelsea and Arsenal are ahead of them. So I still think Manchester United's academy is one of the best in the Premier League in terms of educating and bringing through players. I think what's maybe leading to a perception that Man United's academy has stopped working is that they aren't developing those graduates into top-level players. That environment has not been a healthy one for young players for a long time. So a lot of the time, those players will have to leave to reach their full potential. Scott McTominay, Anthony Elanga, Alvaro Carreras at Benfica this season, Paul Pogba, Andreas Pereira, Angel Gomez, all left Manchester United as academy players and furthered their careers in other places. So there is a real pattern there, and I also think Taylor's absolutely right. There's a changing academy landscape where in 1992, with the class of 92, you find a bunch of local lads. They've all grown up in Salford. They come through the Manchester United Academy. That doesn't really happen anymore. I mean, even Barcelona, like Pedri, we all think of Pedri as part of their next generation. Grew up in the Canary Islands, came through in Las Palmas, comes to Barcelona as a young kid. And Manchester United are doing similar, where Chido Obi Martin, who is thought of as one of the best young strikers in Europe, or not Europe, in England at the moment, he's 16 years old, scoring for fun in the youth team. He comes through the Arsenal Academy. Man United signed a young defender called Aidan Heaven, which is a great name, by the way, in the January transfer window from Arsenal. He goes into their youth teams. I think the idea is he's going to be getting some first-team minutes later in the season. So it just feels like things have changed and we don't really get those class of 92 groups coming through into first teams anymore.
Yeah. And 2 more things off of what Graham has said. The first, I go back to the conversation we had about the Basque Country and why Basque clubs are so strong, even though they're pulling from such a smaller, like size-wise player pool. And I think there is a patience within those clubs and within those fan bases of, if you sell on your very talented 22-year-old left back who's been developing through the academy for a long time, and now he's played a bunch at senior level, and now you've gotten a $60 million offer from Chelsea. You sell that player, you're bringing in a 19-year-old who's been through the academy. I think there is an acceptance of, we sold the big guy, we've made this money, we're bringing in this young player, they're going to need time to develop into a more polished product. I think there's going to be a patience there because there's a plan and there's a philosophy in place. With Manchester United, I think they have left backs they probably could bring through from the academy when they have the injuries they've had. The problem then is it makes you look weak. If you are meant to be one of the biggest clubs in the world who can buy any player they want, if you're having to rely on academy players, I think there's a perception at Manchester United that makes you look weak, even though, like we talked about in the Champions League, Real Madrid are playing 3 non-defenders in defense and making it work. I don't think that needs to be the case, but I think there's a perception that why bring through an 18-year-old when we can go sign a left back for $30 million or $40 million, and now we're as strong as we were. But I'm not sure that's always the case. I think that is definitely a big part of it, but I think that philosophy also then means you're having to sell players and get rid of players who then come good elsewhere, a point that Graham has already made. And I think the reaction to that from Manchester United, this would be my final point on this one, would be that there then seems to be a hesitance to sell players, but specifically loan players and loan players with a plan in place. And so oftentimes you have players who probably could be starting on loan in the championship or with lower Premier League clubs or in the Bundesliga or elsewhere, staying with the academy team for maybe a year or two longer than they need to be, and then they don't really develop into first-team players, and so then they're sold to places where maybe they would have been on loan a year before, and then they come good. And so I think that sort of mixed approach and reliance on transfers over the academy also kind of shapes perception, but also shapes the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Taylor. My first hunch, kind of thinking about this question more, is that a lot of this perception around Manchester United is part of increased Premier League spending and kind of the landscape shifting across the board. And I think part of that's true. Part of it also is maybe not quite true, and there's another point I want to get to in a minute. Like, I do think you can see that clubs of Manchester United's size now do lean towards spending big money on senior players to fill in, as you've said, rather than just going and promoting from within. And there is some data to back this concept up, although it is a little bit outdated at this point. The Athletic had a piece about kind of the academy system in England come out. And this is sort of me reading straight from that. The number of minutes given to U21 players was crashing, and this was about 20 years ago, from almost 92,000 minutes in 2006-2007 to only 53,000 minutes in 2010 and 2011. And then eventually the Premier League sort of comes in and releases a new plan to restructure academies and a blueprint on how to develop more and better players. Like, clubs were getting richer around this time, and most were opting to buy the finished article instead of developing along the way. And that is a change from maybe a little bit of where Manchester United, to use them as the example here, had been a little before then. So I do think spending is like a really significant factor here, and the Premier League now being the dominant league in the world changes the structure and changes how the teams inside that league operate in a very real way. The other component here, I think, and you all have better perspective on this than I do because I wasn't watching Manchester United anywhere near this time. I feel like it's probably pretty hard to recreate a crop of players as good as the class of 92, right? Like, that kind of feels like maybe the most obvious bit of all of this is they just popped out a bunch of legends all at the same time, and that's not totally unheard of. There are academies that are still doing that sort of thing. Like, Barcelona is producing absurdly good players. Like, they are still churning out the best talent in the world. But that doesn't really happen in a whole lot of places. And that Manchester United churned out so many club legends all at once. There's other context around it. It's them willing to give those players a chance to play and allow them to be legends in the first place. You don't get legends without actually playing players. So I understand there's a bit more nuance here, but I do think it's relevant to note that, like, those dudes that formed the backbone of those Fergie teams were amazing at soccer. And it is really hard to put that many of them together in the same group at the same time.
Yeah, Manchester United have done it twice in their history, and it kind of coincided with these, with winning the European Cup in these kind of momentous moments. They had the Busby Babes, and then players like George Best and Bobby Charlton came from that group as well, and then they had the class of 92. Having said that, and this is where this scenario becomes like if buts and maybes for Manchester United. Braga in his question says Mainu and who was the other one? Garnacho. Yeah, Mainu and Garnacho in the Manchester United team, which already kind of puts them ahead of other Premier League teams, I'd imagine, in terms of minutes to academy players. But they've just sent Marcus Rashford to Aston Villa. There's a scenario where he is a key player for them right now, having been a key player for them for the last 8 years or something like that. And the other player who came through, who was a top-level player from the academy, was Mason Greenwood, who obviously is banished, rightfully so, for other reasons, but in terms of his talent was quite clearly good enough for that level. So there is an alternative universe where Manchester United have 4 academy players as key figures in this team, which then maybe paints them in a different light to how Braga frames it in his question.
Okay, very good stuff. Thank you very much, Braga, for that question. Let's go to Ira Jersey, who comes in with this one. What is the team that won the Champions League or its predecessors but did the worst that same season in their respective domestic league? Basically, the UEFA version of Wigan when they were last in the Premier League the same season when they lifted the FA Cup. Can anybody in this group give me a better answer than Chelsea in 2011-12, who won the Champions League under Roberto Di Matteo, who only took over the club in March of that season when Andre Villas-Boas was relieved of his duties. That season when they won the Champions League, they finished 6th in the league. They finished 2nd the previous season and 3rd the season after. So a bit of a disastrous domestic season. Any other bidding, Joe?
I've got a bid. I think your answer is the best, but there is another answer. And I went through all the way back to 1989, and then I ran out of time of Champions League winners and looked up how they did in the domestic league. The only other one that I found in that time span that is maybe better, but for a different reason, is Liverpool, who won the 2004-2005 Champions League. They finished 5th in the Premier League, which is better than what Chelsea did a few years later. But they finished 37 points off of the title pace. Chelsea only finished 25 points off of City's title pace in the year that you mentioned, Ryan. So on pure points and actual results, irrespective of the context around them in the league, Liverpool are the worst that I found in terms of being so far off the pace and still winning the Champions League at the same time.
And the wrinkle about that season, Joe, so I remember this happening vividly. So at the time, there was no way for a defending champion to get into the Champions League if they finished outside the qualification spots. So it was the top 4 at the time. There wasn't the 5th spot. And so UEFA gave Liverpool special dispensation to qualify through. They sent them in at the first qualification round, but they basically created a new way for Liverpool to get into the Champions League for the next season, which I feel like if that happened now, I feel like clubs would be taking UEFA to court, and that it feels like it wouldn't just kind of vanished, that whole thing. But I think I have an answer that beats all of those, right? So I've gone back to 1982.
Yeah, you did.
Took me a while, and this is the lowest I could find. Aston Villa, when they won the old European Cup in 1982, they finished 11th. In the old First Division. I feel like that's going to take some beating. Surely there's not a team that's finished lower than 11th in a league season when they've won the European Cup.
That's very impressive research. Well done, Graham. Peter
The painful sigh from Joe.
I spent so long on it.
Sorry, Ryan, I stepped on what you were saying. I just couldn't get over how frustrated Joe was to have been bested at that answer.
You win some, you lose some, lads. I lost.
Taylor, we're probably not going to beat the Aston Villa answer there. I think the closest I found was another semi-answer would have been Dortmund when they won in 96. The season after they finished 10th. Not the same season, the season after. And then obviously they had a bit of a financial implosion. They needed to be rescued by Bayern after that. But
that's a good one.
Wait, what?
Go ahead.
Bayern lent
explain.
Dortmund money to stay afloat back then when they had their financial crisis.
They loaned them money, yeah. I remember. Well, I don't remember.
I would have waved and said, bye-bye.
It's not how they roll.
They were like,
Germany,
we'll take all your good players for the next 3 decades.
That is better. You're right. That's better.
Yeah,
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was going to make one up to best you all, but I feel like we've ended on a good note here, so we can keep it rolling. Because, Chelsea and Liverpool were my answers.
And they were both wrong.
Yeah.
Ira, thank you very much for that question indeed. Let's take one more before we take a break from Ian Brady. Do you have an I thought they were going to be great but they weren't player for your respective teams? Mine was Juan Agudelo for the US and Adnan Januzaj for Manchester United. Graham is nodding sagely at this one. What do you got?
Yeah, well, I was also on the Januzaj hype train that season. I thought he was going to be a superstar, and Manchester United were only 1 season removed from being good at that point, so you kind of thought, well, they'll be a winning team before too long, and none of that happened.
He had a good song. It really helped cement the idea that Adnan Januzaj was going to be there for forever. Whenever a player has a good song, you want it to stick around.
What was the song? I don't know the song.
I want to tell you, I might as well do about a boy who can do anything. He comes from Belgium. His name is Adnan Januzaj.
I do quite like that.
It's pretty good.
I'll just start singing that at Sterling Albion games. People will be very confused. I'm not going to mention any Sterling Albion players because you won't know who they are, and I have likely forgotten about them. But for Scotland, I think probably the most hyped Scottish teenager of my lifetime was Karamoko Dembele. So he was in the Celtic senior squad at 14. He was in a Nike commercial with Neymar at 15 years old, and just never kicked on. He's actually at QPR now in the Championship and is still only 21 years old, so maybe he will come good, but I think the hope was that he would be a superstar for Scotland. Another couple Scotland nominations very quickly. John Fleck, he was hyped as the Scottish Wayne Rooney for years, never really made the breakthrough at Rangers. He, similar to Dembele, he actually had a good career at Sheffield United and ended up playing in the Premier League, which was, it's a good level, but he wasn't the Scottish Wayne Rooney after all. And then my final one, this one might be a little bit harsh, but Che Adams, when he decided to play for Scotland before Euro 2020, and he was this youngest striker banging out in the Championship, and big Premier League clubs were being linked with him, and then he decided to play for Scotland right before that tournament. We hadn't been at a tournament for 23 years. I was hyped about that, and he's still in our national team squad, and he's doing well for Torino and Serie A, but I think he's maybe underwhelmed for Scotland generally, hasn't scored a whole bunch of goals. So yeah, Che Adams is on my list.
All right. Joe, who's on your list?
The one that I always think of first with this question, because I loved him so much, is Emre Moore, who I just enjoyed watching absolutely when he was with Borussia Dortmund. And it was Pulisic, and it was Ousmane Dembele, who's also on my list for a different reason, and Emre Moore, all like kind of cooking as these young up-and-coming players in the attack at the same time. Emre Moore has since gone to Celta Vigo in La Liga, where he barely played. Then he went to Greece, and then very much hit his Turkish quota, and has helped us hit our Turkish quota. He went to Galatasaray, and then now, Taylor, he is playing for Eyüpspor?
Eyüpspor?
Okay, honestly, not bad for a first.
I think it was good. Yeah, I mean, I knew who you were talking about.
I'm
That's
proud
good.
of myself.
Yeah.
But Emre Moore is just like tricky, kind of half space attacker, and I don't know, I liked him a lot. Dembele's on this list, even though he doesn't really belong. But I was convinced he was going to be like the best player in the world, because he looked. Whenever I watched Christian Pulisic at Dortmund, I would always think I would trade Christian Pulisic for Ousmane Dembele in a heartbeat. And I would still do that, to be clear. Ousmane Dembele is the better player. I don't think it is necessarily even that close. But I thought he was going to be like the guy of his age group and even above and below that a bit. And it just hasn't really been the case. The Barcelona move didn't work out, and I don't know, it just hasn't really fully clicked. I'm enjoying watching a bit of his renaissance right now. That's maybe even still a bit too harsh at PSG. But that Dortmund team, I was always thinking, man, Pulisic might end up being the third best of these players, and that was definitely not the case. Shout out to New Mexico United's own Gideon Zelalem, who just signed for New Mexico United.
Oh, man.
He is another huge answer to this question. He still kind of plays differently than a lot of other deep-lying U.S. players with his distribution and his ability in tight spots. Just his game never really scaled after Arsene Wenger hyped him up as the next great thing, and we all did that a bit too. That didn't end up working out for anybody. My last one, Taylor, I'm curious if you're going to remember this. I believe this is the 2017
Dude, you have me
U.S.
reeling from Zelalem.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
that
that's
is
a
an
good one.
incredible answer, Joe.
That
And
one
it is-
always just
I think I had that.
for me.
I think I had that professionally removed from my brain, but I was so sure. Like, that's the dude. Here we go. Oh boy. Oh no.
Yeah.
I don't know if this player, the one you're about to name, could be more painful. But yeah,
It
Zelalem
won't be.
is up
It,
there.
it won't be more painful.
Okay,
but
okay.
I remember, I think it was the 2017 US U20 World Cup team. I believe there's like, I think Tyler Adams is on that team. I think there's a bunch. I think Josh Sargent's on that team. Maybe I have my timeline a little bit off here, but Derek Jones.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Derek Jones coming up. Ryan, you should know Derek Jones. I don't know if you remember Taylor Derek Jones like coming up through the U.S. youth national team setups. Ryan does not remember Derek Jones. He is like this big, rangy, like physical, but also had some really good technical traits. Central midfielder, and I remember being so impressed with his profile with the U.S. youth teams. And it just never clicked. He's now become a bit of an MLS journeyman. He was with Charlotte FC, which is why Ryan should know who he is. And now he's with the Columbus Crew, but he like just didn't really play at all last year. And he basically became maybe the lowest level center mid on that squad. There's probably a couple others that I'm forgetting, but he did not pan out in the way that I thought he could with sort of a Pogba-esque build. Yeah, Derek Jones is kind of a what could have been for me.
Taylor, any more nominations here?
Man, Joe has done some good ones. Joe, your Derek Jones one reminds me of Tony Tchani, who I think had one cap, maybe two caps for the U.S. in the January camp, and then I think ends up representing Cameroon, but for a moment felt like he could be a central midfield answer for the United States. So too did Jonathan Gonzalez. I thought that was going to be a sky is falling moment. Oh no, everything is wrong with this program. I mean, at the time, everything kind of was wrong with this program, but I thought for sure he was the man.
I fairly recently, Taylor, went back through old episodes over Christmas just to listen to some of them and found an emergency Jonathan Gomez episode
Gonzalez,
Gonzalez, sorry, who when he decided to play for Mexico.
It was because at the time that's U.S. fails to qualify for the World Cup. It's like Sunil Gulati, I think, is leaving at that point, but like we don't have a new president coming in. We know there's going to be a new coach, but we don't know who it's going to be. It just felt like everything was kind of falling apart. And then at the same time, to lose this central midfielder who could have been the anchor and the linchpin of that midfield to Mexico, and talks about how like U.S. soccer disrespected him, and nobody, like Thomas Rongen was in there begging him to stay, but that no one was taking Thomas Rongen's call. It just felt like everything was dysfunctional with U.S. soccer, and everything was, I think. It's just also the case that Jonathan Gonzalez didn't end up moving to that level, but at the time was starting for Monterrey and looking very, very good, and we thought was going to be this difference maker and wasn't. But yeah, there was a good amount of panic in there. I think I forget about him sometimes as being a dual national who left, because I think he doesn't end up reaching the heights that I hyped him to be.
Yeah, that timeline is so clear in my mind, Taylor. If the U.S. fails to qualify, and then it's like, okay, what next? And it's Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams as these up-and-coming center mids that you're going to feel really good about. And at least these guys can be sort of the backbone of the team. And then Jonathan Gonzalez. And you're thinking, wow, at midfield three of those guys is going to be really hard to play through. Pulisic on the break. And then Jonathan Gonzalez does not end up playing for the U.S. And unfortunately for Jonathan Gonzalez, just doesn't end up having, so far, a really great career. Although he's still, I'm sure, making decent money in Liga MX with Juarez.
Turns out when you're young, things can maybe not always go the way you thought they were going to, and maybe you don't develop the way you thought you were going to. Maybe that's the case for Aaron Johansson as well. He's another one who I thought when he joined the 2014 World Cup team, I was like, we courted him away from Iceland. He made that choice. He's already scoring goals in Europe. He's going to come in and be the striker we need. And it turns out he was not the striker we needed, or didn't end up getting that opportunity. For Manchester United, there are way too many to list. Some fit the bill of being like younger players coming through that were hyped, similar to Adnan Januzaj. The one I've mentioned before, Gabriel Obertan, who I believe most recently was in North Carolina and maybe is still there. I forget which North Carolina team he's playing for. That was
Independence.
1,000% based on just me wanting someone to come in and be the next Ronaldo, because that was right when Ronaldo was leaving, and it's like, here's this like unheralded French guy who could be a coup, who's going to come in and he's going to bring like the silky Thierry Henry-ness to Manchester United that we haven't had in so long. And instead he brought, I can run in straight lines and dribble out of bounds. And that wasn't really what we were hoping for. I thought Owen Hargreaves, when he moved to Manchester United, was going to be the answer, the difference maker. He was going to solidify everything. And then it turned out he didn't have hamstrings, or the ones he did have
he's
were
a bit
made of
different
glass.
though, right? Because like he was good until his legs exploded.
But I think the speed at which they exploded and then the frequency that they continued to explode meant that he never really got to that level. But you're right. I think he would have otherwise, and at some points did, and still has the greatest penalty I've ever seen. And Paul Pogba, his return is another one where I thought that's a slam dunk. That's the guy. We brought him back in. It's a coup of a signing. It's a statement signing. This is going to be like the swaggiest team ever. Remember when we all said swag? And he was going to captain that team for a decade to come. And now,
and then he played right midfield for 1,800 minutes.
I saw a very disconcerting story about Manchester United are not in talks with Paul Pogba to come back and train with them.
I saw that,
and I did not enjoy that at all, because that felt like, were they though? Why did that need
why are you
to
saying
be
that?
Exactly.
Couple for me to add, not necessarily for my team, but I thought the princes who were promised were ahead of respective World Cups were Bernard, you remember the little Brazilian Bernard, and Lucas Paqueta, who I picked up far much higher than he ultimately has materialized to be.
That.
Well, Ryan, to be fair, when I think of players that I think are going to lead the World Cup in scoring, Lucas Paqueta is literally the first one that comes to mind.
That was the confusing thing. It wasn't that he was a bad player. I'll always remember just the confusion as we're on that stage of picking the top scorer from the tournament and Ryan throwing out Lucas Paqueta.
The thing that Ryan forgot, which if he had done, he would have known, you have to check his bets. And you would have known Lucas Paqueta did not back himself, nor did his family members, to be the Golden Boot winner. So you would have known then that he wasn't going to win that award. That was your
gone
mistake.
for yellow cards.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And when his brother's birthday is, I think, then you would have known. He's getting a yellow card on his brother's birthday. What a generous guy.
I will squeeze in one quick
Allegedly.
one.
Just cover herself there.
Fire truck of lawyers on their way. One quick one for me, I'll squeeze in. Not a player, but a manager. For my team, which was a manager called Egil Olsen, a Norwegian manager, famously sort of brilliant Norwegian manager. You might have to trawl the memory banks to remember Egil Olsen. He took the Norway team to the World Cup in 94 and 98. He got Norway to number 2 in the FIFA rankings, basically massively, outplayed their coverage. He was sort of known as a professor. Back in a quarter of a century ago, he had a very scientific approach to the game. He was using video analysis in a way that wasn't really being used back then. And he basically argued that Norway didn't have the best players to beat the best teams. They needed to be smarter. And that was kind of his approach there. He had a very unique playing style, very counter-attacking style. It was quite long ball. It was hoofing the ball down the field, moving quickly, having a big target man up top. It was a 4-5-1 shape most of the time, which could sort of defend in numbers but also attack very directly. Used a zonal defense system as well. And once again, 25 years ago, this is all quite relatively revolutionary stuff. There is a phrase he is famous for in Norway, which of course is "Vi vet best uten ball," which is to be the best off the ball at running, to be best, off the ball running, which was sort of what made him famous in Norway. So he came on the back of all this after the 98 World Cup to Wimbledon in 99. Wimbledon had Norwegian owners, two of the most famous Norwegian businessmen who own Molde as well, brought him to Wimbledon to sort of launch the Premier League franchise, if you will. He came when John Hartson came, big target man, big striker back in the day. He broke the club transfer record to bring in John Hartson. It looked like it was a real turning point for Wimbledon to sort of really head and march on into the European top places. The team had been in the Premier League since the start, since 92, and had been in the top flight for a decade. He relegated Wimbledon. And Wimbledon, if you follow the story, didn't really recover from that until we started our own new team in a park in 2003. So he is my nomination, someone who had so much potential and promise. There's a quote from Robbie Earle who said basically he couldn't get the best out of us. Robbie Earle being a player.
Understatement.
At the time. Which is, suffice to say, he did not get the best out of Wimbledon, who seemed made for a coach who could have a manager who could scientifically hoof the ball downfield.
So just looking at his Wikipedia page, I have to say, Ryan, I've got no recollection of this guy, but he was Norway manager for over 2 spells, 12 years in his career? How did I have no recollection? As recently as 2013, he was the Norway manager.
So his Norway kept England out of the World Cup in 94, basically outsmarted England as well. So they were very impressive, as I say, number 2 in the rankings. All the glitters ain't gold, Prince once said, Graham.
His Wikipedia page is interesting. He's a member of the Norwegian Communist Party. So there we go.
Always wore Wellington boots on the sidelines. Rain or shine.
Quite the look.
Just going to leave that there. There we go. We're running long on this one. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the serious part of the show. Footballers who've had significant music careers. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to Listen to Questions. Oh, look who's been in touch. It's Texas DOZIER, once again, who's contacted us on our Discord.
I feel like you're just selecting his questions now, or their questions now, because you like saying that word the way you say it.
Accurate. If you stopped watching soccer after Euro 2024, says Texas DOZIER, if you stopped watching soccer after 2024, the Euros, and turned your TV on today, what would be the most surprising move or hiring or team performance that you would point to? Taylor, I'm going to say Nottingham Forest, doing quite well. Mm-hmm. Is that a good nom?
That's a great nom. Yeah, especially given the way they ended the season before and how chaotic they seemed for them to be where they are. I think that's a good one. I had an original nominee, and then I had one that just occurred to me. I think if you told Napoli what their situation would be at present, they would be really surprised, and I think people who followed Serie A might be. If you they already had hired Antonio Conte at that point, but to then sell Kvardana, to let Osimhen go out on loan, you lose 3 veteran players walking, you bring in Lukaku, McTominay, and Billy Gilmore. I don't think you would assume that team is top of the table. So yeah, it's multiple shots at Scotland. So that was going to be my answer, that Napoli have done what they have done. But I think the answer, I now realize, is probably Mauricio Pochettino coaching the U.S. men's national team. That is a pretty sizable shift from this summer, especially. Was Copa America after the Euros as well?
Same time.
Same time, yeah. Finals were on the same day.
All right. But I think, if you switched off there when it's the U.S. are in a pretty bad situation and didn't make it out of their group, that's probably not what they were going for. Oh, well, I'll be back in 6 months, 7 months, 8 months to come back to Mauricio Pochettino's in charge, and Patrick Aubameyang is the future of the program. I think you might be a little surprised by how things have played out.
Well, maybe on the manager side of things, yeah, granted. Graham, who's on your list?
Yeah, Poch was on my list. I know. So I remember when Berhalter got fired, and there was chat about Klopp, and I am on the record on this show as saying that was pie in the sky stuff. And I know they didn't get Klopp, but they got pretty close with Mauricio Pochettino. I never thought that was realistic. So I think that's probably the answer. In the Premier League, Nottingham Forest, I mean, you would be questioning what PEDs Chris Wood is on. Frankly, I'm still questioning that. I think the extent of Man City's drop-off would be shocking. Not that I think that nobody saw a drop-off coming. I certainly, Joe and I can't remember who Taylor predicted, but I know Joe
Taylor
and
was in with us too. I don't remember.
We all predicted Arsenal, right? Or a lot of us predicted Arsenal to win the title. So
and by that I meant Liverpool. I got confused. It was a different red team. That was on me. My bad.
Sure, of course, yeah. But I don't think
I actually said Lucas Paqueta, which is the weird wrinkle you didn't see coming.
Sure. I don't think anyone saw the sheer cliff edge coming, right, where they just wouldn't have the physicality to compete at the top level. The other shout that I've got is, if I'd just seen that John Duran had gone to Saudi Arabia, I probably wouldn't have been too surprised by that. But if you had told me that he had turned into the best young striker in the world for like 3 months, and then a Saudi team paid 90 million euros for him, then yeah, that might shoot my shuggle. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Huh?
Shoot my shuggle.
Pardon?
Is that not a term?
No, it's not.
Oh, shoot your shuggle. Oh, guys, I thought you said something different.
Shoot my shuggle.
Shoot the shuggle. Yeah.
I'm going to add that. I'm not actually keeping this list, but I'm going to add that to the list of things that Graham might be making up and pretending are Scottish sayings, and we're all just going to have to roll with. But yes, haven't we all shot our shuggle?
I've shot
Joe,
a few.
Whomst amongst us haven't shot their shuggle
It's
tail?
shook.
Indeed.
Shook my
Whomst
shuggle,
is a
like
beautiful
shook my head, like.
Graham,
you know.
now you're baiting and switching us. Don't get your story straight, man.
Yeah. Now you're shuggling our shook. Joe, you haven't gotten to go yet, correct? Because I just had one more nomination that occurred to me, but they might be on your list. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go very, very quickly. Well, first and most importantly, I would be utterly floored that Vinny Jr. didn't win Ballon d'Or. Outraged, maybe even. I think that would have been the first thing that I would have Googled and checked just to make sure that Vinny was rightfully awarded the most important award on the planet. And horrified that didn't happen. So that I just wanted to make sure I said that first. City, and Pochettino was next on my list, but I think we've discussed that well. I was a little warmer on U.S. Soccer going out there and getting somebody of that higher ilk. Still kind of a bit surreal to see it happen. I would be utterly floored that City are 5th in the table. Drop off, yes, Graham, I think that's fair. Pep losing a record number of games in a row, them having a 5-game losing streak and a different 3-game losing streak, and a stretch of 1 win in 13 games across the Premier League and Champions League. 1 win in 13 games. Just looking at that on FBref and the results page would floor me. And I don't think this one's been said yet. Inter Miami getting bounced by Brad Guzan because he decided to wind back time and also become prime Manuel Neuer. Like, I didn't have that on my bingo card.
Yep.
So that was the last one that I had on my list. Taylor, you were there with me?
That was it. Yes, for sure. I think if we switched off after the Euros, I would have been like, oh, and Inter Miami obviously won MLS Cup, right? We all knew that was going to be the
Or
case.
at least they didn't lose to Atlanta United. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, crazy.
I can't tell if that's more disrespectful to Miami or Atlanta, and maybe that's
Atlanta,
the way it should be.
100% Atlanta, absolutely.
If I'd have switched off and you'd told me that England would have a German manager very soon after Euro 2024,
Yeah,
I
that's a
might
good
have
shout.
doubted you as well, to be honest. But I don't hate it. In fact, I like it. Texas Hoosier, thank you very much indeed for that one. One final question for this episode from Andrew McPherson, whose name is great but much less fun to say. I'm sorry, Andrew. Are there any footballers who have had significant music careers? I know Alexi Lalas has released a lot of stuff. Unsure how successful it's been, but the volume is there, says Andrew. And there's an English low league player who raps under the name Kamikaze, who I've heard. Who else has released music and has been successful with it? Also, any funny or truly awful releases? Graham, I'm going to start with an active striker who's in Serie A. He's a second. He's second in the scoring rankings right now in Serie A.
Getting quiz PTSD.
Plays for Fiorentina. His name is
Moise
Moise Kean.
Kean.
Yeah. He released an album in December. It was called Chosen. It's got a song called I Was Born a Winner on it, among its 11
Nice.
tracks, which
And then I played for
definitely
Everton is the next track.
So he's active, and he's very much
done.
talented with the mic and with his cleats.
So
Is that,
not
wait, hold on, Ryan. Is that your review of the album? Like you listened and it was good.
I've definitely listened to it all, yeah.
Okay, and it
as long
was-
as there's no follow-up questions, Joe, yes, I
Gotcha.
have.
Yep. Cool. I'm done here.
I listened to a lot of bad music in answering this question, and the answer to worst song is Ruud Hullit's song that he maybe sings on but kind of mumbles over. It is truly an abomination. I will try to find.
Are we talking about Ruud Hullit's Not the Dancing Kind, an absolute classic? Or are we talking
There
about
it
a
is.
different one from Ruud Hullit?
Thank you, Joe. Did you listen to it?
Oh, absolutely, I did. It did. I'll be honest, it wasn't as bad as I didn't think it was as bad as you're making it out to be. But it
Joe
also
is
wasn't
wrong. Has
good.
been brainwashed. That is my response to that.
It's kind of a good vibe.
Very good.
Oh man.
Can I name what I think is the best soccer players music song? Music song?
Music
song
song.
with music.
You are giving away that you are not human. I just want that on record. If we find ourselves in an Inglourious Bastard situation where you have to be American, Ryan, the minute you say that word the way you say it, people are going to be like, well, he is not from Indiana. We know that much. So
One-
we're going to have to practice that.
I
Please
go into
put
the
on
Virgin
one music
Megastore
song,
and I say,
please. Yes.
one. Yeah. Oh, you just stole it right out of my mouth, Joe. Oh, we're a hive mind.
What would
here.
you order if you were at a bar, Ryan?
Depends if if Jackie was behind.
There it is.
Would it be the Anfield rap?
One human
No, it's
alcohol.
not the Anfield
Graham's
rap.
like, all right, guys, let's
go on.
move
Yeah,
this back.
back on track. The Anfield Rap, obviously, very famously for Liverpool in the 80s.
It
Paul
rules.
Gascoigne, Fog on the Tyne, by the way. If you haven't heard Fog on the Tyne, his
yeah.
cover of Fog on the Tyne,
forgot
Paul
about
Gascoigne
that.
singing that is wonderful. The actual best one from the 80s also, I don't know how many of you, if any of you have heard this, Diamond Lights by Glenn Hoddle and Chris Waddle, the pair of them.
Oh, vaguely.
Waddle and Waddle.
I can't think what it goes like, but I vaguely remember.
It's a proper 80s banger. If you've not heard Diamond Lights, look at it. It's actually a
They
good song.
opened for Hall and Oates, Hoddle and Waddle.
That's amazing.
It was there's a good story. Hoddle was on another. Oh gosh, there's another soccer podcast out there, a '90s one, where he just sort of described
Pass.
the recording process, where he basically showed up and did 4 minutes in the studio, and they made something of it. Yeah, very good.
Oh, wow.
A few more. I think lots of modern players have released albums and singles. I'm unclear how successful they have been. Memphis Depay has released an album or a couple.
Bad.
Daniel Sturridge as well. Royston Drenthe, to name a few. Slavan Bilic famously plays guitar for a metal band, or did in Croatia. Rod Stewart played at a fairly high level. Allegedly had trials with Brentford in the 1960s before becoming the musician we know him to be. The answer, even if it's kind of a technicality, the one that I see most often mentioned on most lists is a player who played for the Real Madrid Academy, had a brief footballing career. I'm guessing Joe's
Iggy.
nodding. That is correct. Iggy Azalea. No, Julio Iglesias is the answer. One of the most commercially successful Latin artists of all time, sold over 100 million records worldwide, and had a brief footballing career. I think as a goalkeeper for Real Madrid.
Yeah.
I might be wrong on that one, but then got injured, and so instead became a musician. So I would put him in there, and I would add that I legitimately enjoy the Anfield Rap, and I won't apologize for it.
You should.
Fair. I learned so many good bits of slang along the way, like Kushtila. You're welcome.
Isn't he
There you
also
go.
in World in Motion? There's a John Barnes rap bit in World in Motion, isn't there? Okay.
John Barnes only raps very briefly in the Anfield Rap. What you might be remembering, Graham, is when they use his head as a microphone. That's a thing that they do because it's fuzzy and it looks like a microphone. So he ducks down below the camera and then they rap into his head. Is that what you're remembering?
That is what I'm remembering. Yeah, you're right.
And also, me come from Jamaica. Me name is John Barnes. When I do me thing, the crowd goes bananas.
Wow.
That's his rhyme in the Anfield Rap.
That's taken right out of the Ryan Bailey book of rhymes.
really
right
is.
there.
Yeah, it was, yeah. His World in Motion rap is basically, you've got to kick the ball with the foot
Oh,
part
that's
of your
actually what I'm
leg.
thinking of.
Yeah.
That's actually what I'm thinking of. Yeah, the Anfield rap. I need a refresher on the Anfield rap.
All right, Aldo. Sound is a pound. I'm Kushtila, but there's nothing down. The
All right,
rest
let's
of the
stop
lads
this.
ain't got him
Let's stop
sussed,
that.
so we have to learn him to talk like us.
Joe, MLS suggestion. Joseph Paintsil. He.
Oh, yeah.
At they made him do music at the.
No, they didn't.
celebration
They
or
didn't
whatever.
make him do music. Joseph Paintsil did the
Right,
music.
sure.
Graham. Joseph Paintsil happily did the music. I think I talked about this. I can't remember if it was on mic or off mic. Taylor, you and I earlier this week. Joseph Paintsil is like one of the best personalities in MLS. He's got a twin sister named Josephine that he consults on all of his life decisions, and he also loves to make music. I don't know if we're going to see more of Joseph Paintsil in the Apple TV doc that's dropping in about a week. Or maybe exactly in a week because this is Friday. I think we might. Either way, we will hear more about Joseph Paintsil as long as he's in MLS because he's got some fun stuff. The other MLS adjacent one that was on my list is Alphonso Davies. This kind of fits into the bucket of current players doing music and none of it's very good. That's a bit harsh. Most of it's not very good. Alphonso Davies' rap that he made to announce the new contract that he's just signed with Bayern Munich, I can say with absolute certainty, is not good. So that just so that we can absolutely nail that down, it's not good, but it is real, and I respect the effort. It's just not good.
Okay. Graham, any more? Happy?
Hesse, remember him? Used to play
Yep.
for Real Madrid, played for PSG. He apparently formed a Spanish reggaeton band called Big Flo with his friend. This is from 442
Oh,
with
I
his
heard
friend DJ Nuno in March 2014.
And they're
After
still together,
two-
right, Graham? They're still
he-
performing and loving each other?
Well, after 2 singles, he opted to pursue a solo career under the name JM and released a party track entitled Pakata.
Wow.
Lucas Pakata.
Hold on.
In 2019.
Again.
Dude, my shook has been shooted right now.
Very good. I went to Las Palmas when there was a Charlotte FC player who was playing there. Hesse's-
Yes.
my abiding memory of that trip was going through the parking lot for the players. There was Hesse's Lamborghini and everyone else had like a broken Nissan Altima. It was great.
That must be from his reggaeton band,
Yeah,
the
it's
revenue from that, yeah.
Ryan, was that the guy who never played for Charlotte, or was that the other guy who did
No, that
for a
was
minute?
Sergio Ruiz who did.
Who was the other guy who didn't?
That was the Australian.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I just couldn't remember.
him.
Okay, fair enough.
Derek
Fun.
James.
Fun times. Pulled a profit. All good,
I'm sure
Jeff.
there are many footballers who are good musicians or like can sing. Like Sergio Ramos, I saw listed on a few things where he supposedly like sang with a band once and had a good voice. But generally speaking, I'm not sure footballers should be good musicians because I think to be a good musician, you have to work really, really hard for a long, long time and write good songs and be in the studio and work with producers. And I don't know if a career as a top level footballer really allows you that opportunity. I think if you are sort of focused on your music career, you're probably less of a notable footballer these days.
Yeah.
I mean-
Yeah. Sorry, Ryan, you go.
I was going to say, as a soccer player, you have to work up to 2 hours a day. So
That's
you don't have
exactly
to-
what I was going to say. Is I think Taylor, I completely disagree with you because
Nah.
they do nothing most of the day. The thing that I was actually going to back of what you said is I just don't like it when people are good at multiple things. It just makes me feel bad about myself. So I don't think they should be allowed to be good at music because that means they are good at two things.
Noted Bo Jackson hater, Joe Lowry, right there.
Yeah,
for you.
Deion, Bo Jackson, I'm just not multi-sport athletes. Stop. Is that a Kyler Murray sort of adjacent opinion? Yeah, it is. Maybe
Well,
should
he has
play
to be
baseball
good
instead.
at one of those things for it to be Kyler
that's-
Murray.
Yeah, harsh.
So,
Fair.
Joe, you're good at piano and you're good at podcasting. That's two things.
No, they're the same. They both start with P.
Darn it,
That's
you're
how it
right.
works.
You've really shocked my shockle, or whatever it is.
I've waddled your huddle.
All right, we're closing
I
out the
don't
way we
care for
started.
that. That sounds obscene.
We have bookended
Joe's
this
gone.
episode.
Joe's under the desk.
Andrew McPherson, thank you very much for your
By
question.
the way, I'm dibs on that now for Joe's first album. You've waddled my huddle. That is An Intimate Evening with Joe Lowry. It's his album of piano singles. There we go.
Thank you very much to everybody who submitted a question. Apologies to Riley McGree, the Australian whose name I forgot a moment ago, who didn't play for Charlotte FC. If you would like to submit a question to us, you can do it via our Discord server, which you can access at patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. You can go to totalsoccershow.com/questions, or our new preferred method, you can leave us a 5-star review and contain your question there. Oh wow, Taylor, as we if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see Taylor is holding up his copy of a Manchester United 7-inch. Which is it? The Come On You Reds? Is it the status quo one? Which one is it?
No, it is the team themselves singing. We all follow Man United, as well as then there's Southbound. They're the best. So
Taylor, is that like how does
don't
that connect via Bluetooth to your? Is it like
poorly is the answer,
Okay.
Joe. I do love that they're standing on like it is it a baseball pitch? It seems to just be a random park with rusty metal behind them. A good representation of Manchester United past and present.
That's where Ratcliffe will have them playing
Yeah.
before the end of the season.
That's right. It's coming back. Don't be afraid. But for now, thank you very much, listener, for joining us on this one. Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much for sharing your record collection and all and sundry with us, sir.
Just the one. My pleasure, my friend. A good huddle to your waddle.
Indeed. Joe Lowry, a pleasure as always. Thank you very much for your contributions.
Oh, guys, this was so much fun. Thank you, Ryan.
And Graham, Shuggy, Shoggy, Schmoggy, whatever, thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. Consider your Sugar Shook.
That's it. There we go. That's canon. Thank you very much, listener, for joining us on this slightly chaotic episode. We'll be back on the feed very shortly, but for now, bye.